Hello and welcome back to the channel from the city of Sarandë on a stretch of the Ionian Sea known as the Albanian Riviera. I'm walking along the beautiful promenade here along the bayfront of Sarandë, looking out on the Greek island of Corfu, just a few miles offshore. Sarandë and Corfu are jumping off places for each other, with a daily stream of Greek visitors coming to Sarandë by ferry and Albanian tourists going in the other direction.
Sarandë is also a base for great coastal scenery and beaches, not to mention the world-class archaeological site at nearby Butrint.
As late as 1913, the year Albania gained nationhood, there was really nothing here except a small settlement in support of an isolated port. And Sarandë remained small for much of the 20th century, only blossoming in the 1990s after the fall of communism in Albania. Since then, it's more than doubled its population to about 50,000 today, although it seems much larger because of the infrastructure here. The city continues to have a relatively large minority of Greek-speaking Albanians, many of whom are dual citizens of Greece. Yet the numbers aren't as large as they used to be. This was once a predominantly Greek-speaking town until the former communist regime transported, or I should say transplanted, many people from northern Albania here in the years after World War II. Make no mistake, the real vibe here is the clear blue Mediterranean water, which brings lots of tourists, including many of them on cruise ships that come here, especially in the high season in July and August. And many of those folks wind up where I'm walking, along Sarandë's very handsome promenade, which clings to the shoreline for about a mile and a half.
In the foreground is my hotel, the Sun House, where my room's balcony is the perfect perch to gaze out over the sea to the Greek island of Corfu, a few miles offshore.
If there's one knock against Sarandë, it's that it's overbuilt. Although it's quite easy to glimpse beautiful views along the promenade and just beyond, much of the bayfront properties, the residential areas, amount to a kind of concrete jungle where many mid-rise condominium buildings have been built, quite a few of them unfinished, by the way, each seeming to block the view from the next one. Even access to the beachfront is limited if you walk out of the main district of the city. Not that you'd need to, but it's just that something that looks so spectacular residentially from, say, the water is not quite what it seems. Despite appearances, Sarandë is an ancient town. There's evidence of a settlement here 2,000 years ago, and mosaics from the 2nd and 3rd century CE have been uncovered in one place or another around the city. In fact, it wasn't very long ago that The ruins of a synagogue from the 5th century was unearthed near Sarandë's main square.
To better appreciate the region's rich history, I'm headed south from Sarandë through the lush coastal hills to the neck of a peninsula surrounded on 3 sides by an inlet of the Ionian Sea. The inlet can only be crossed by ferry and is watched over by an old Ottoman fort on one side and a Venetian watchtower on the other. I've teamed up again with Dutch friends Martien and Madelief to visit a very special place here, the park-like campus of the ancient ruins at Butrint, while our driver, Edmund, does some fishing.
The ancient settlement of Butrint may just be the most amazing archaeological and World Heritage site that you've never heard of. Occupied 1,000 years before Christ, this impressive ruin was founded by Greeks, Corinthians to be specific, as an offshoot of their colony that they'd established already on the island of Corfu, which is not far away from here. Today, although it's one of Albania's most important archaeological sites, only a relative handful of people come here in comparison to the better-known sites in this part of the world, despite the impressive ruins here. To be here at this site is like being at 6 or 7 sites, because that's how many civilizations from times of antiquity are represented here. At the moment, I'm standing above a Greek theater that was built in the 3rd century, and it sits beside a temple to the god of medicine that was built here in the 4th century. From ancient times, Butrint was occupied by a string of civilizations who've argued over as well as fought over it until relatively recently. Forget the Romans, Byzantines, Ottomans, Greeks, Venetians. I'm talking about even in the 20th century. In 1913, at the end of the First Balkan War, Butrint was ceded to Greece, but Italy objected. And so a treaty worked out in London ended up giving Butrint and the surrounding area to the then new modern nation of Albania. That decision angered the Greek-speaking people in the area so greatly that it was one of the catalysts for a short-lived autonomous breakaway state during the first few years of Albania's existence. So you might wonder, why the involvement of Italy? Well, it seems they didn't want Greece controlling both sides of the Strait of Corfu, since the island side was already in Greek hands. As the Roman Empire waned in the 6th century CE, there was a greater need to fortify the site here. And I'm walking through the evidence of that, passing through the gate on the channel side of the wall that was built here in that century to bulk up defenses against potential invaders. Even if there were no archaeological site here, this would be a really great place to visit, walking through these leafy forests of sycamore trees and oaks, and in such a pleasant, mild climate, surrounded by water on 3 sides. It's no wonder this was a choice spot for successive civilizations to establish towns, and indeed its physical beauty explains that. Some of these ruins are just incredible to walk around in. The experience is as if you're almost discovering them yourselves, as in the case of this Roman bathhouse that was only discovered by Italian archaeologists in the 1930s. And just look at this place. The splendid estuary and valley beyond that is here today is much unchanged from in ancient times, certainly in medieval times. And it could be said that the crowning achievement of Butrint probably occurred where I'm standing now, near the top, the Acropolis of this site, which is home to the grand castle that the Venetians built, called Triangular Castle, which caused those living below to move away from the previous town and take refuge here. This was a much cherished place, strategically and otherwise. In ancient times, in fact in 31 BC, Roman Emperor Augustus, fresh from his victory over Mark Antony and Cleopatra at the Battle of Actium, declared Butrint a retirement colony for soldiers loyal to the empire. Nice beaches nearby, warm weather, great soil for growing food. Not a bad place to retire 2,000 years ago. I'm sitting on the corner of this 15th century castle, the triangular castle built by the Venetians, with my leg propped up on an old cannon. And as I look out here, and as you can see behind me, the view is spectacular. Just a terrific spot in ancient times and today.
It's getting late and there's no time to take the ferry to explore the villages on the other side. So I head back to the car to see how the fishing is going for Edmund.
The fish now, it is like when you go to casino and you win sometimes, and it's like a history, one time, I got some money and it is the same.
Today your number didn't come up.
My number didn't come out. Yeah.
Sarandë is twinkling like a pearl in the afterglow of sunset. Tomorrow I head across the strait to Corfu to begin a new journey in Greece.